You're listening to Unmuted with Papamutes. You're listening to a Papamutes Unmuted podcast.
Welcome to Papamutes, everybody. Today, my guest is Sean O'Brien. Sean is the co-producer of the film Beyond Bars. Sean is also an advocate for social justice, which ties in with the film. And he's coming to us all the way from Los Angeles. I'm thrilled to have him on. Sean, welcome to Papamutes.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's get to the important stuff. How's the weather in Los Angeles?
Today it's beautiful. I live close to the beach, so it's sometimes gray and gloomy, not like you would think of typical Los Angeles weather, but we've been very
You've been having a lot of rain. I mean, I'm in Philly, we get they tell us about stuff and it's raining and snowing in the mountains. It's like crazy.
Yeah, we have been having a lot of rain. It's unusual. We get most of our rain is in like one part of the year. But I would say we probably have like gorgeous weather 90% of the time. So it's hard to really complain about the weather here. But people do it all the time. People love complaining about the weather in LA.
Of course. So before we get to the movie Beyond Bars, your background, correct me if I'm wrong, you're from New Orleans and you moved eventually to Boston for college and then to LA. I know I'm condensing it, but just how did you get involved with film in New Orleans?
Yeah, I actually my background is in acting. I studied theater at Boston University. While I was there, we did a lot of film related things in addition to theater, and I think that's when I started to get my interest in production. I took a few film classes there. So when I graduated from BU, I moved back to New Orleans, and this was at the time when they had a very prominent film industry that was just kind of starting to take off. And
Okay.
I worked in for a few like TV shows and films kind of behind the scenes at that time. And that's really where I started to get my interest.
All right. Are you a Patriots fan?
Patriots fan? No, I am a New Orleans Saints fan, and that's about as
Okay.
far as it goes.
We'll, we'll back it up and say the Saints then. Yeah, I just didn't know. People move to Boston, all of a sudden
Oh,
they get
totally.
on
It was
that
a big
wagon.
deal. Whenever I was there, people would get very upset that I didn't care for the Patriots.
Of course.
I am actually an Eagles fan, though. I have turned into a bit of an Eagles fan.
And how is that?
That would be my boyfriend, John Pickhaver. We've been
We're
together
going
for
to get
quite
to
some
him later.
time. Yeah.
We're going to get to John later. I mean, the most
But
amazing athlete in Delaware County, history. Um, so, how did you become the producer of this film?
so when I moved to LA, it was originally kind of for acting purposes. I knew I was interested in all aspects of film, but I really came here with the intention of working in acting. I did some kind of small stuff and just was here for a while. And acting, you do a lot of kind of odd jobs to kind of bide your time and pay the
Sure.
bills. And so I was just kind of doing a lot of different random things. And eventually I was like, okay, I really want to kind of focus in on film more specifically. And I saw an opening for a job for an administrative assistant position at Brave New Films, and I looked into the company, and I was like, this is very connected to the things that I care a lot about, and I applied for the job, and I got hired as the admin assistant, and pretty quickly I was given tasks for film related things, and one thing led to another. I think I like to say I was in the right place at the right time with the right skill set. And
Nothing wrong with that, right?
yeah, and it just kind of, I became the production coordinator. And then I eventually became an associate producer. And by the time the film was over, I was a co-producer on it. Had a lot to do also with timing. So the film, it took several years to complete. And
I was going to ask that. How long, did it take?
yeah, I was on it. I think I worked on it for about 2 years, and it was, I think, a year and a half in the making before that. So I think in total about 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So you, in the natural ebb and flow of working on a production, people come and go, and a lot of the producers had finished their time on the film, and that is kind of when I was still working for the company, and I kind of filled the slot that was needed at the time, and the rest was history.
Nice. Now, I thought of this as you were talking. Brave New Films is what are they about in a nutshell before we get to the actual movie?
They are, or I should say, we are, because I'm a big part of the company now.
Sure.
It's a social justice nonprofit production company. So we're 501(c)(3), and I think basically in a nutshell, we just advocate for the big social justice issues of our time.
Hmm.
And we use media as a way to do that. And so Robert Greenwald is the president of the company, and he's been making these films under Brave New Films for about 2 decades now.
It's
Uh,
a great website. I mean, I've gone there and checked it out, and a lot of stuff on there.
yeah, he's been
Pretty
doing it
cool.
for a very, very long time. So it's that's essentially we and Beyond Bars was. I think every year we just kind of take on new issues, and Beyond Bars is at the time it was all about criminal justice reforms.
Got
And
it. So, well, there you go. What is it? I mean, you kind of said it, what it's about, but in general, Beyond Bars is about what?
yes, Beyond Bars is most basically about racialized mass incarceration told through the lens of Chesa Boudin and his family, and his rise to becoming district attorney of San Francisco. And it tells the history of the Weather Underground a little bit. It goes into the history of the Weather Underground, and it talks about the larger issues of mass incarceration, and it starts to get into electing progressive district attorneys
I mean,
and
I
the
watched
bigger
it.
movement for that.
Right. I mean, I saw it about a month ago, and I refreshed my memory recently because I went away, not to prison, but on vacation. And
Right.
it's a great documentary. I mean, I would categorize it as that, right?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Very well done. Very well done. Uh, so maybe just looking back on it, um, well, what is the story? I don't want to tell it. You know, what is the story of how this abandoned child basically became the DA? It's a great story, but if you can condense it, um, you
Yeah,
know,
it's a tough one to explain in a quick in a condensed kind of way. But
mhm,
so basically, his parents, Chesa Boudin's parents, Kathy Boudin and David Gilbert, they were
mhm,
members of the Weather Underground, and the Weather Underground was a far left radical organization formed in 1969. It was in response to their outrage at the Vietnam War and the ongoing racial injustices in the United States. Um, and they were trying to raise money for their operations, and their operations often included bombing government buildings in protest. And no one was ever hurt in the bombings, which I think is very important to note because it was very much like radical protests. But when the robbery happened in 1981 of a Brinks truck, I can get more into all of that, but it Chesa was left at a babysitter, and
right.
uh, two of the other members of the Weather Underground, who are also featured in the film, Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, they took him in and essentially adopted him as their own child. And he grew up visiting them in prison. And I think when he was in prison, he really saw the racial injustices and how much like families were kept apart from each other